My sister started demanding a nursery for her unborn child, so I sold the house. My name is Clarice Melton, and I've always been the one who never let anything fall apart. The glue. The planner. The one who remembered birthdays, sent thank you cards, and had a drawer full of batteries for emergencies. At 35, I had built a stable, modest life for my daughter, Laurel, and me. We lived in a cozy craftsman house in a sleepy Kentucky town. It wasn't grand, but every piece of furniture had been picked with care, every wall painted with intention. And Laurel's nursery, well, that was my masterpiece. The pale yellow walls were covered in hand-painted bluebells. I'd stenciled them myself, every evening after work, bent over a ladder with paint on my jeans. The rocking chair had been sanded and reupholstered by hand. My neighbor's husband, a retired carpenter, helped me build the bookshelf that held Laurel's tiny collection of board books and cloth dolls. That room was our beginning. It held our dreams, our late-night lullabies, and Laurel's first smile. So when my younger sister, Dina, announced at Laurel's first birthday party that she was expecting and immediately asked if she could have Laurel's nursery, I froze. It happened like this. Laurel's birthday was a small backyard gathering with close friends and family. I baked the cake myself, a strawberry one with cream cheese frosting and pink rosettes. There were tiny party hats, bubbles, and a little crown for Laurel, who squealed with delight at the attention. I had just lit the candle when Dina, dressed in a sweeping cream-colored dress that looked suspiciously bridal, stood up and clinked her glass with a fork. "I have something to share," she said, placing a hand on her stomach. A hush fell over the group. "I'm having a baby." Her voice was high and triumphant. Everyone erupted into applause and cheers. My mother, Mona, gasped and immediately began crying. My father hugged Dina tightly. My aunt from Missouri clapped so hard I thought she might knock over the drink table. Everyone was talking, rushing toward Dina, offering congratulations and blessings. Everyone, except me. I stood there, holding the match, watching the candle flicker on Laurel's cake. My daughter blinked up at me, uncertain why the attention had shifted. Her chubby hand reached for mine. I smiled down at her, my heart sinking. After the party, Dina found me in the kitchen wiping down the counter. "I didn't mean to overshadow Laurel's day," she said, her tone sweet but slippery. "But you know how these things go. Family is family." I said nothing. She leaned against the doorway. "Listen, with the baby coming and all, I was thinking, maybe I could use Laurel's nursery?" I turned to her, cloth in hand. "What?" "Well, you were going to move her upstairs anyway, right? Into the bigger room? And I don't have anything for the baby yet. I thought, since the nursery's already perfect and you can afford to redo a new one. You want me to give you my daughter's nursery?" She smiled as if I'd misunderstood. "It's just paint and furniture. You can redo it. I mean, you make good money. And Chad and I are still figuring out our place. It'd be so helpful." Chad was her on-again off-again boyfriend. Last I'd heard, he was working part-time at a lawnmower repair shop and living in his cousin's basement. "I built that room for Laurel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "With my hands. With love. And I take good care of it," she chirped. Later that night, I got a text from my mother. "Clarice, I think it would be lovely if you could help your sister. She's going to be a mother now. Think how special it would be for her to raise her baby in that nursery." Then one from Dina. "I'm so excited to start decorating. Can we start moving some things next weekend?" It hit me then, not for the first time but harder than ever, in our family, being responsible meant being responsible for everyone. I was expected to give because I had given before. I was expected to say yes, to make room, to hand over what was mine, quietly, graciously, because I could handle it. I sat alone that night, long after Laurel had fallen asleep, and stared at the soft glow of the baby monitor. I looked around the house I had built from sacrifice and secondhand finds. The quiet peace I had preserved for Laurel and me. And I realized something simple and hard. They wouldn't stop taking. Not unless I stopped giving. So I opened my laptop, found a local real estate agent, and scheduled an appointment. Then, I opened a blank document and typed, "To whom it may concern, I am ready to sell my home." The house was silent except for the hum of Laurel's white noise machine and the occasional creak of the old oak floors. I sat at the dining room table with a mug of chamomile tea gone cold, the cursor blinking at me like a heartbeat. The real estate agent, Ms. Doris Greaves, called first thing Monday morning. She had a warm, steady voice and a briskness that reminded me of a beloved librarian I'd known as a child. "Well, Clarice," she said, 3-bed, 1.5-bath homes in this neighborhood are in high demand. If you're ready, I can have a photographer here Thursday and your listing up by Saturday." I hesitated for half a second. Let's do it. From the outside, nothing changed. I dropped Laurel off at daycare, went to work at the nonprofit where I managed grant proposals, and stopped at the grocery store like always. But inside me, a revolution was unfolding in absolute silence. I began sorting. First, the attic. Then the closets. Then the drawers of things I hadn't touched in years but had kept just in case. It felt like shedding a skin. I donated what I could, boxed up what I couldn't, and carefully labeled everything else for storage. Laurel's room was the last to touch. One evening, I stood in the doorway as she slept in her crib, her little chest rising and falling. The moonlight caught the pale blue edge of the rocking chair. I walked in quietly, sat, and just rocked for a while. That room had been built with such care. But the person who built it had done so out of fear of being alone, of not being enough, of having to prove to the world that she could be everything her daughter needed. Now, that person was gone. I had become someone else, someone who could give Laurel what mattered most, not a perfectly decorated nursery, but a mother who knew her own worth. So I photographed every inch of it. The mural. The shelves. The little framed quote that said, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." I wanted to remember that love had been here. That care had been poured into the corners of these walls. Then I began to dismantle it. The books went into boxes. The chair went into storage. The changing table, with its faded handles and slight wobble, was set out on the curb with a sign that read "Free, loved well." I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not Dina. Not even Rachel, my best friend. I didn't do it to be cruel. I did it because it was the first time in years I was doing something entirely for myself and my daughter. And I needed to know what it felt like to choose me. But of course, it didn't stay secret for long. That Saturday morning, I was at the new condo for a walkthrough with Ms. Greaves. It was smaller, yes, but the kitchen was newer and the third bedroom, Laurel's new room, had a window seat that overlooked a row of maple trees. I pictured us reading there in the autumn, wrapped in a blanket with a cup of cocoa between us. My phone buzzed. It was Rachel. Did you sell your house? I called her immediately. You told me you were thinking about it, she said, half laughing, half panicking. I just drove by and saw the sign. Clarice, are you okay? I'm better than I've been in years, I said. There was a pause. You're serious? Yes. Rachel exhaled. Okay. Then I'm coming over with wine. Tonight. We're celebrating. And we did. That night, we sat in the mostly empty living room of my soon-to-be-sold home, sipping white wine and eating Thai takeout off paper plates. Laurel was asleep upstairs in her travel crib. Rachel raised her glass. To fresh starts. I clinked mine against hers. To not being the family doormat anymore. The next morning, I opened my phone to a storm of messages. From Dina. I thought we were moving stuff in today? Why didn't you say anything? From my mother. Clarice, this is very disappointing. We had such high hopes for you and Dina bonding during this season. Selling the house without consulting us feels selfish. From my father. We are all family. Decisions like this affect everyone. I didn't respond. That afternoon, Rachel and I spent an hour creating decoy boxes labeled Dina's linens, baby gear, and keepsakes. We filled them with old magazines and newspapers, just enough to give them weight. They looked convincing when stacked by the front door. The plan was simple. They would arrive expecting to take over. Instead, they would find the house empty, the keys gone, and the truth written in bold red letters on the sold sign in the yard. The day they arrived was overcast, the kind of gray that smoothed the world into silence. I had left Laurel at daycare and finished the last of the staging early that morning. The house was clean, empty, echoing in places where life used to be thick. The only signs of habitation were the fake moving boxes near the front door and the scent of lemon oil on the hardwood floors. I waited behind the curtain. The U-Haul pulled up first. Dina emerged, belly just beginning to round under a sweatshirt that still had the tags on. She looked confident. Triumphant, even. Chad climbed out after her, dragging his feet and looking like he'd just woken up in a car. Behind them, my parents arrived in their sedan. My mother stepped out cradling a bag of homemade muffins, her version of diplomacy. I heard the first footsteps up the walk. Then the doorbell. Clarice. Sweetheart, my mother's voice called through the wood. We're here. I took one breath, then another. And opened the door. They stood like a parade of expectations. My father held a box labeled nursery books. Chad was balancing a roll of carpet and a baby swing. Dina had a measuring tape in one hand and a paint sample fan in the other. "We're ready to get started," she said. Chad and I were thinking we'd set up the crib in the corner, by the window. She stepped inside and stopped. There was nothing. No rugs. No crib. No shelves. No framed art. No cozy corners. Just emptiness. Her face fell like a drop tray. "Where is everything?" I smiled gently. "I moved it." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I sold the house, Dina. We close next week." The silence was a vacuum. You sold the house?" "Yes." Her eyes widened. But the nursery. My baby. You said I could move my stuff in." "I did. And then I realized I didn't owe anyone a room in my home." Dina looked at our parents like a child searching for backup. My mother stepped forward. "Clarice, this is outrageous. We made a plan." "You agreed." "No. You made a plan," I said. "I never agreed. I was maneuvered. Pushed. And then expected to go along with it because I always do." My father cleared his throat. "You should have spoken to us before making such a huge decision." "I did speak," I said. "You didn't hear me. None of you ever really do." Chad, still standing outside with the swing, looked up from his phone. "So, what do we do with all this?" "You're welcome to leave it by the curb," I said, motioning to the porch where I'd stacked the last pieces of free furniture, an old bookshelf, a bassinet, and a set of drawers I no longer needed. A handwritten sign read, "Please take." "You're being spiteful," my mother hissed. "This isn't you." "I think it's exactly me," I replied. "It's just not the version of me you're used to." Dina was nearly in tears now. "I'm pregnant, Clarice." "I know. And I wish you nothing but the best. But this house? This life I built? That's for Laurel and me. No one else gets to assign it a different purpose." "This isn't fair," she shouted. "Where are we supposed to go?" I shrugged. "Wherever people go when they realize they can't rely on others to fix their lives anymore." My mother's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me like she was seeing someone new, and maybe she was. "You'll regret this," Dina whispered. "No. I won't." Then I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "You're free to load the furniture. Or leave it. Either way, I've got an appointment to get to." I walked past them and down the driveway, my car keys already in hand. As I drove away, I saw Dina still standing in the doorway, my mother staring after me, and Chad lowering the swing to the ground, already bored. The sign in the yard glinted in the weak light, "Sold." Back at the condo, I sat with Rachel on my small balcony. The air was crisper there, thinner somehow, like possibility. Laurel was sleeping in her new room, which I had decorated with soft greens and drawings of birds in flight. Rachel passed me a glass of sparkling cider. "Did they throw a fit?" "Like toddlers," I said. She smiled. "And you?" "I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't apologize." "You must feel 10 pounds lighter." "I do." We toasted quietly as the sun dipped behind the trees. Then my phone buzzed. Messages again. From my cousin. "Just saw Dina's Facebook post." "Wow. Really?" From my aunt. "Family is supposed to support each other. Not kick each other when they're vulnerable." And from my mother. "Your father didn't sleep last night. Dina is devastated. You've caused so much stress." I put the phone down and looked at Rachel. "You know what the hardest part is?" "What?" "They really don't understand. They genuinely think I did something wrong." Rachel nodded. "That's how you know you finally did something right." In the days that followed, the backlash arrived like a slow-moving flood, one notification at a time. My extended family group chat became a battleground of passive-aggressive disapproval, prayers for softened hearts, and memes about sisters who forget the meaning of loyalty. Dina, as expected, took her grievances to Facebook, posting a picture of her ultrasound under the caption. "Some people would rather protect walls and paint than be there for family. I'll never raise my child to be so cold." The comments were full of predictable affirmations. "You deserve better. Your sister sounds jealous. You're doing amazing, sweetie. Cut toxic people out, even if they're blood." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That part of my life where I scrambled to clean up Dina's messes, soothe our mother's nerves, and swallowed my voice, was over. Rachel came over again that Saturday. "Have you considered just deleting Facebook?" she asked, bringing over takeout and a bottle of something bubbly. "I have a professional account for work, but yeah, I'm done reading the comments." I held up my phone. Blocked, muted, restricted. It's quiet now. Peaceful. She smiled. "You seem different." "I feel different." And I did. Every day in the condo was like breathing new air. Laurel adapted quickly, more quickly than I expected. She loved the new playground, the library down the block, and the bakery that gave her a free cookie every Saturday. She stopped saying bye-bye house and started saying hello ducks, because we now had a pond in walking distance with mallards and geese who eagerly accepted her breadcrumbs. It wasn't just a new address. It was a new season. One where I was allowed to be the person I was becoming, not the caretaker I'd been assigned to be. But peace doesn't always last uninterrupted. One Tuesday morning, there was a knock at the door. I was in the middle of getting Laurel ready for daycare, tying her shoelaces as she babbled about ducks. When I opened the door, Chad stood there. Clarice. He looked uncomfortable, more awkward than I'd ever seen him. His shirt was wrinkled, and he held a paper bag from the cafe downstairs. I didn't speak. He cleared his throat. "I'm not here to fight. I don't know where else to go." "Why are you here, Chad?" "Dina's been staying at my place since the house thing. And it's been hard. She's not okay." I folded my arms. "And this is my problem because?" He winced. "She's been spiraling. She keeps saying you abandoned her. That you're shutting her out of the baby's life." "I didn't abandon her. I set a boundary." "There's a difference." "I know. I think she expected you to save her again. And when you didn't, she didn't know what to do." I leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe that's something she needs to sit with. Maybe she needs to figure out how to save herself." Chad looked down at the ground. "She's angry. Hurt. Scared." I nodded. So was I. For years. He looked at me then, really looked, like he hadn't ever noticed me before. "You're not what she says you are." "No. I'm not." He stepped back. "Just, if you ever feel like talking to her. I think she's finally starting to get it." I didn't answer. I watched him leave, still unsure if I felt pity, relief, or nothing at all. Later that evening, Laurel was asleep in her toddler bed, her arms wrapped around a worn stuffed rabbit. I sat by the window, watching the city lights blink like quiet stars. My phone buzzed again. "Dina." A long message this time. "I know you hate me right now. I don't blame you. I've been selfish. I thought if I acted confident enough, things would go my way. But I see now how I pushed too hard. How I've leaned on you more than I should have. I'm not asking for the nursery or the house or anything. I'm scared. I'm going to be a mom, and I don't want to raise my daughter to make the same mistakes I've made. I miss you. I miss us. And if there's ever a way back, I want to try. Even if it's from a distance." I stared at the message for a long time. It didn't make things right. It didn't undo the years of imbalance, the manipulation, or the guilt. But it was something I'd never seen in her before, humility. And it felt real. 2 days later, I took Laurel to the park near the pond. She chased ducks while I sipped my coffee and watched the trees turn gold. That's when I saw her. Dina. She was walking slowly, one hand on her stomach, the other clutching a paper bag from the same cafe Chad had carried days before. She looked different. Not glamorous, not put together. Just human. She saw me. Paused. Then walked over. "Hi," she said, softly. "Hi. I didn't know you came to this park. We live nearby now." She nodded. "I got an apartment on the next block. Above the bakery. That's a good spot." She hesitated. "I just wanted to say thank you. For standing your ground." I didn't understand it then, but I think I do now. I said nothing. She glanced over at Laurel. "She looks happy." "She is. I want that. For my daughter. And if it's okay, maybe one day she and Laurel could meet. Cousins, you know?" I considered her. The version of her that stood before me was not the girl who had crashed a birthday with news she knew would shift the spotlight. She was not the woman who'd expected someone else to build her nest. She was someone who'd been humbled by consequence. "I'm not ready to jump into family picnics and group chats," I said. "But I'm not closing the door, either." Dina smiled, tearfully. "That's more than I hoped for." Laurel ran back to me then, waving a feather she'd found. "Look, Mama. Pretty." I knelt and kissed her forehead. "It is, baby. It really is." Autumn settled over the city like a wool blanket. Every tree turned flame red or copper gold. The air grew crisper, and the sun faded earlier, leaving us with longer evenings filled with board books and warm baths. Laurel, now speaking in full phrases, had adjusted to the new condo as if she'd always lived here. She had names for the ducks at the pond, favorite spots on the window seat, and a love for the Saturday morning hot chocolate from the bakery. On one such morning, after our usual walk, I saw her again, Dina. She was behind the bakery counter, in an apron dusted with flour. Her hair was pulled into a bun, and her eyes had the tired look I recognized from my own early motherhood. She didn't wave, but she did smile, a shy, earnest kind of smile. I nodded back. As we left, Laurel looked up at me and said, "That lady's gonna have a baby." "Yes, she is," I replied, brushing a leaf from her coat. "That lady's your aunt." Laurel didn't ask more questions. She was too focused on her chocolate mustache. Weeks passed. One Sunday, while Laurel napped and I sorted laundry, a letter slipped under the front door. It was handwritten, folded into thirds, and addressed simply, Clarice. I opened it with careful fingers. Dear Clarice. I didn't know how else to say this without it sounding like an apology that comes too late. Maybe it is too late. But after everything, I want you to know I'm learning. And not in the way I used to say I was learning. I mean it now. Working here, renting a walk-up, budgeting groceries, I never thought these things would feel like accomplishments. But they do. And they've made me realize something I think I was too proud to admit before. I always assumed someone else would catch me when I fell. Mostly you. You don't owe me a relationship. I get that. But if someday you'd be willing to let my daughter know her cousin, even if just from a distance, I would be grateful. Not for me. But for her. Thank you for loving me enough to stop saving me. Dina. I sat with that letter in my lap for a long time, the paper soft from my hands, the ink smudging slightly at the corners where my thumbs pressed. The next Sunday, I tucked it into a drawer and dressed Laurel in her yellow jacket. We took our usual walk to the bakery. As we walked in, Dina looked up. There was a second of surprise, then something gentler. Laurel reached for the counter with sticky hands. "Cinnamon roll, please." Dina laughed. "You got it, kiddo." She handed over a small roll and a paper napkin. "No charge." "I insist," I said, pulling out a bill. She took it without protest. As we turned to leave, I paused. "Sunday mornings, we usually walk the pond around 9. If you're ever free." Dina blinked. Okay. And that was it. No grand gesture. No tears. Just a door not wide open, but no longer shut. The family, for a time, stayed distant. My mother, bruised by the fracture she hadn't expected, sent a Christmas card with a vague note, "Hope you're well. Kiss Laurel for us." I wrote back a short reply and included a school photo. I set boundaries, but I didn't sever. The difference was that I had learned how to stand firm without needing to burn everything to the ground. Sometimes, that's the hardest lesson. Rachel, ever loyal, still dropped by with stories, wine, and advice on preschool admissions. She marveled at Laurel's confidence and often said, "She's got your quiet fire." But I knew the truth, Laurel's fire wasn't mine alone. It had come from the decision to no longer let other people control the temperature in our home. The new year brought its own rhythm. One snowy morning, as I pushed Laurel on the park swing wrapped in scarves and giggles, I looked across the playground and saw Dina on a bench. She held a sleeping baby swaddled in a deep blue blanket. We nodded again. Later, she walked over. "She's 2 months old," she said, glancing down. "What's her name?" "Callie. Short for Callista." "She's beautiful." "Thanks. She keeps me up all night and throws up on everything I own." We laughed. "You're doing it," I said. "On your own." Dina looked up, eyes glassy. "Some days I still don't know how. But I do it." We stood in the cold, breathing little clouds of air, the babies bundled and content. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we might not repeat our parents' mistakes. That our daughters might know each other not through guilt, obligation, or shared chaos, but through choice. One night, as I tucked Laurel into bed, she asked, "Is Aunt Dina my friend?" I thought about it. "She's family," I said. "And sometimes, when you work at it, family can become friends too." "Like you and me?" I smiled. "Exactly like you and me." She grinned, then closed her eyes. Years later, when Laurel asks about that house, her first home, I'll tell her it was lovely. That we sang songs and painted walls and learned how to be brave there. But I'll also tell her that letting go of that house gave us something better. A home that wasn't just ours by deed, but by choice. Where love wasn't owed, but offered. Where peace wasn't conditional. And where goodbye wasn't a loss, but a beginning. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.